Good evening, ladies and gentlemen in the chamber and those online. Welcome to Performance and Finance Scrutiny Committee for the 13th of May. Mr. Eddy, sorry. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Bob Rakes, Councillor Tedder and Councillor Betton as subbing for them respectively.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Okay, so next item is item 2, minutes of previous meeting. Has everybody read them and happy with them? Any points arising? No? Are we happy to agree them? Okay, so that brings us to item 3, declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declaration of interest on any items on the agenda tonight? Brilliant. Okay, so that takes us to item 4, public questions. We have a number of questions tonight, and I think there are 6 public questions from various different people. As you're aware, that we get 30 minutes for the questions. So we get the question, we get the answer, which will be read by the portfolio holder for parking, which is Councillor Asprey, and then there'll be follow-up questions from each person. We have some in person and some that aren't. So, without further ado, we go to first question, which is submitted by Atia Fard. That's question number 1. Over to you.
Okay, great, lovely. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for everything that this council has done to improve our car parks across the council. But over 3,000 residents, 1,800 via petition and 1,452 through a survey, have been calling the council for the return of 1 hour's free parking. I previously provided you with evidence that increased charges are driving customers away. Again, you received the full detailed survey results today with the breakdown of various answers to the questions. The May 2025 parking strategy confirms this, namely that there was a recorded drop of 6,074. Sorry, my brain has frozen. 674,045 visits to the Square Camberley compared to the previous year. Despite a slight revenue increase from P&D car parks, the economic harm to local businesses has been far greater due to reduced footfall. Will the council reinstate 1 hour free parking across P&D car parks, introduce it at the multi-storey car parks, reduce charges, and reinstate flat charges for Sundays and P&Ds? Restoring footfall will support the local economy and future revenue for the council. I think restoring the 1 hour free parking would definitely help the residents and the local businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fard. Councillor Asprey, I believe you're going to answer that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Fard, for the question. Obviously, over recent years, there has been a consistent, steady decline in town centre footfall, driven by changing consumer behaviours and broader market forces. COVID pandemic obviously accelerated this change, and this has fundamentally altered traditional retail centres and the associated parking going with it. Our report that we're bringing later on in this meeting show what has happened in our town centre and our pay and display with, despite the footfall reduction in the town centre of 10%, our car parking reduction in our multis is only 4%. So I would argue that the slight decrease in parking usage are more closely aligned with national consumer trends than any specific price increases. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asprey. Ms. Fard, you get a chance to respond with a supplementary.
Thank you. The survey results I sent you today show that out of 1,452 residents who took part in it, just over 1,000 people have said the increase in the car parking charges has made them consider shopping or dining elsewhere. A resident said the increase in the car parking charges have stopped their family using Camberley, and that unless they have to, they all go elsewhere. What do you have to say to this family when maintaining that the increase in the car parking charges has not had any or little impact on the decrease in the footfall, and maintaining that you will not reverse this strategy?
Thank you. Councillor Ashbury?
Thank you for the supplementary question. Again, I refer you to my answer from the first question. I believe the data supports the fact that the change in retail behaviour in town centres is what is driving the reduction in the footfall in Camberley, and not the car parking charges. If I look at the percentage of people who park in our car park as a percentage of people who shop in our main square centre, that percentage is increasing year on year. So a higher proportion of people who shop in Camberley are parking in council-owned car parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2 is submitted by, is it Belika? KG Belika. Are they online?
Thanks, Chair. KG Belika did mention to me that she's planning to join online, but we don't have her right now.
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll go on to the next questions, and if they come online, we can refer back to it, and if not, they're in the public domain anyway. So with that in mind, we get question 3 from Tracy West, but I don't know if they're online either.
Thanks, Chair. Tracy West didn't give an indication whether she's going to be attending, so I presumed not.
Okay, thank you. So in the case of them not appearing, we're not going to read the question out because we've got a long agenda. The papers are on the public portal, so anybody can read them as they can with any of the questions tonight. So we'll go on to question number 4, which is, again, over to Ms Fard.
Thank you. What are the council's plans for the car parks in Deepcut? Will the council provide the car park free of charge, or if there will be a fee, will the council provide free parking for the church members and its staff and provide 2 hours of free parking to the public? What is the expected opening date to the public of St Barbara's car park? And what is the anticipated date of transfer of ownership of this car park from the MOD to the council? What is the expected footfall and revenue for the proposed deep car park at Wooden Road if it were subject to parking charges rather than being sold? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashbury.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms Fard, for the question. From a car parking perspective, because we are talking about car parking this evening, the new St Barbara's parking facility remains several months away from completion, with an anticipated opening date predicted for the autumn this year, September or October. At this stage, we are still awaiting the final terms and conditions for transfer from the MOD over to the council, as well as detailed information on how the facility will be funded and operated. So consequently, we're unable to provide any further specifics relating to St Barbara's until these details are confirmed. Regarding Woodend Road, the council could review options for this location and could look at turning it into a revenue-generating car park. That has not been done, but it could be done. It wasn't deemed to be a high priority when we put the parking strategy together.
Thank you, Councillor Asprey. Ms Fard, have you got a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for your response, Councillor Ash. But would you then support a call to the Executive on the 20th of May and perhaps thereafter the full Council to ensure that instead of Wooden Road car park being sold, it should become pay and display car park and a community car park maintained and retained for the public?
Councillor Asprey.
Thank you for the question. As I've already said, I am the portfolio holder for car parking and the operation of car parks. The decision on what happens to the sale or otherwise of car parks is not in the remit of the parking service, which is under scrutiny this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asprey. Okay, so that puts us on to question 5, which again was from Tracy West, who we already know as not attending. So again, that question is on the portal and is available for everybody to read. So that takes us back to question number 6, which is Ms Fard.
Thank you. Please provide a detailed breakdown of the footfall and revenue for each P&D car park. the revenue for the Square Camberley and Knoll Road car park since 2019, and confirm what the council's plans are to increase the footfall across all car parks and how much revenue it intends to generate. Please also confirm how many businesses were opened and closed in Surrey Heath since 2019 with a detailed breakdown for each year, and how much business rates and rent were collected since 2022, and confirm how the council has been measuring the economic impact of the decreased footfall on the local businesses. Thanks.
Councillor Ashbury.
Thank you, Chair. I will answer the car parking related questions contained in that question. I do not have any of the financial information that you are requesting regarding rates and rent. For that, I would suggest you would need to submit a Freedom of Information request. But from a parking perspective, we've provided data in our report covering the last 3 years to illustrate trends before and after the tariff increase. I do not believe that doing a comparison with footfall data and trends prior to the COVID pandemic is meaningful, given, as we all know, the change in shopping habits and the whole retail environment since then. So the meaningful comparison, I believe, is the past 3 years. And I say that is in the report. If you require further detailed information relating to businesses, rates and rents, I would suggest you submit a Freedom of Information request to the correct department. I don't have that information as the portfolio holder for car park. Thank you.
Just before I go back to you, Ms Fard, I asked for information from the parking, Mr Burns. I've just asked Mr Stevens if he can look to see if that's something that can be shared. Assuming it can be shared, then obviously we can share it. Okay, so I've got that because I asked for it because I'm a nosy little person. So it isn't, but you're right, it doesn't go back to 2019, it goes to 2022, I believe. So we've got those, and if they're happy to share them, we can share them.
Again, that's why I suggest a Freedom of Information request, because then Ms Boateng can decide what is releasable and what is not. I don't think there's anything secret in any of it, but I just don't think we should be sharing information on how much business rates and rent businesses in our town centres are paying at this meeting.
Sorry, Councillor Ashby, I've confused it. That's just the parking. It's nothing to do with business. So it's literally the parking figures for the last 3 years.
Yeah, sorry, I was just saying, I was just following on. The car parking I'm happy to answer. Yeah. The other questions I cannot answer. They are beyond my remit.
Cool, okay.
And I don't actually think it's appropriate to share that information.
No, yes, I probably agree with that, with business rates, to be fair. Okay, so Ms Fard, you've got the option of a supplementary.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Ashbury. Well, a resident told me, a business owner, in fact, that his business rates doubled this year. And he's really worried that when Deepcar car park is going to be sold, he's actually going to have reduced footfall in the area and that his business will be impacted. But going back to my questions, one of the residents who have taken part in the petition said that in other local areas, blue badge holders, when having to pay, get double the time. But that doesn't happen in Camberley town centres, and that there aren't enough spaces for blue badge holders. Would you consider increasing blue badge holder car parking spaces and time for the car parking spaces where they have to pay? And if so, by what percentage and by when?
Thank you for the question. When we put the parking strategy together, blue badge holders was considered when we benchmarked against what other car parking providers and other authorities were doing, and it was felt that we were competitive in the market and that we were offering the right thing. That is something we could take away if there is a need for that to be looked at. Certainly the number of spaces and any potential discounts that we would be able to offer. That is not something we do at the moment, and it is about a year and a bit since we did the last benchmarking exercise where that was taken into account. But I'm happy to take it away and look at if that's something else we could consider.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Fard. Thank you, Councillor Ashby. So that brings us to the last of the public questions. All of the questions and all of the answers, except for the supplementary answers, of course, are on the portal, so they're for everybody to read. So thank you very much. So now back to the agenda. The next item on the agenda is item 5, car parking strategy, and I believe that's over to you, Councillor Ashby.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Just before I start on that, I would just like to raise a point of order with yourself, if I may. On the 18th of March this year, the Executive made a decision on the apportionment of SIL and how that was to be carried out going forwards. That was called in by 2 members and should have come to this committee this evening. I see Councillor Tedder, as one of the people who called the decision in, is actually here in attendance, so I see no reason why that call-in could not have been considered at this meeting, and I therefore would like it noted that I think that it could and should have been heard at this meeting in line with our constitution.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. We'll note that and we'll go away and just check everything was done properly, and that will be taken on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, moving on to parking. So, since the approval of the parking strategy in February 2024, it feels like we've discussed it many times in this chamber, sometimes with the same visitors we have this evening. And this evening we're here as requested by this committee to look at the strategy following a full year of data and after its implementation. Most of the discussions to date, however, have only focused on one part of the strategy and neglected possibly the most important part, which is about ensuring that the parking service we provide is fit for service and represents value for money for those that use it without being a burden to the Surrey Heath Council taxpayer. Similarly, very little discussion has been had on the lack of investment in our car parks over the past 10 years and the consequences of this lack of investment on the experience that those people that use our car parks have. Let us not forget that parking is a discretionary service and that this council's precarious financial state means that if a discretionary service is not being funded by those that use it, it should be discontinued and not subsidised by council taxpayers. Why should residents who choose not to use our car parks subsidise those that do? I would like to focus on the positive side of the parking strategy. I haven't seen any surveys asking if people feel safer in our car parks now that the lights have been fixed, or if parents pushing buggies or carers pushing wheelchairs are happy now that the potholes and rutted surfaces have been renewed, or indeed the fact that I can now pay by contactless and no longer need to carry coins or pay the admin fee charged by the parking apps. Let us remember, as discussed during the implementation of the parking strategy and reiterated at full council in September last year, that Stripe UK, the UK industry expert in car park life care plans, recommended that we should be spending £300,000 a year maintaining our car parks. And in the previous 10 years to this year, not a fraction of that money has been spent, leaving us with a very large number of unresolved issues. Looking at what's been achieved over the past 12 months, the replacement of the ANPR system, improved CCTV, fire safety works, new P&D machines which now take contactless payment, general surface maintenance, filling potholes, repainting lines, etc. So far, this overdue investment in our parking services has cost over £400,000 in capital expenditure, but there is still much to do if we are to deliver the kind of parking service our residents expect from us. It has been suggested that increased parking charges have caused a decline in footfall in our town centre. The data simply does not support this assertion. Firstly, the reduction in shoppers using traditional town centres has been in decline since before the COVID pandemic, which only served to accelerate this decline. Town centres up and down the country are having to look at reinventing themselves to maintain relevance in the new reality. And this is borne out by the data published by the British Retail Consortium and the Office for National Statistics. Camberley is no different. Secondly, if we analyse the number of people using our town centre multi-stories as a percentage of the square footfall, we can see that it has increased year on year, from 11.3% in 22-23 to 11.7% in 23-24, and despite the modest price increases, it increased again last year to 12.5%. This shows that despite the falling numbers of shoppers, we are capturing an increasing population of the total, which directly contradicts the assertion that people are choosing to park elsewhere. I would suggest that Jeff Bezos has had a much greater impact on footfall decline in Camberley than our modest price increases. As I've already stated, there is still much to do. Works planned for the current year include recoating and sealing Main Square level 5 deck, at least one new lift in Main Square and one in New Knoll Road, stairwell refurbishment, graffiti removal, and any other works that are identified by our annual structural surveys. Our current estimates put the cost of carrying out this work in this year alone at around £600,000. I therefore believe that the aims of the parking strategy implemented in February last year are being met, and I see no reason to stray from its goals of delivering a parking service which meets the needs and aspirations of Surrey Heath residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. Okay, so I'll give a pad really. Anybody got some questions? Councillor Mountbagnam, Councillor Wilson, anyone else? Okay, just those two to start. Councillor Mountbagnam.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the present introduction, which you read out very well. I've got some notes, so I'm going to go do a little bit of freelancing here, so bear with me. I have looked at the numbers, and one of the previous PNF meetings, we were provided with this chart, PNF, or one of the presentations. This chart actually shows that from 23-24, now we are talking after pandemic, okay? So I don't want you to repeat the pandemic again. So let's stick to current scenario. Shows that volume has been falling, okay? What we see here again is a volume is consistently falling with the data you have provided to us, okay? And it's about, I worked it out to be about 14% from 23 onwards to date in a two-year period. It's a significant fall. It's not a small fall, it's really a significant fall. That's a footfall. I congratulate you in collecting the revenue. I congratulate you on putting the potholes right. I congratulate you on painting the lines. It's all perfect. Yes? That's not the issue here. Issue is the town center. If you don't, I'm not giving you a lecture, there's a question. If you don't actually do something about the footfall, and that town center is going down the tube. And it's going down the tube day by day because people cannot park properly. I think you need to reconsider your parking strategy from scratch. Collecting revenue is fine. It's that we also have an economy, local economy, that needs to be supplemented with services. You said car parking is a discretionary service. Yeah, I think you should make it a compulsory service. Call it whatever it may be. If you go to any town center, there is car parking attached to a shopping center because people want to come. And I have looked at the data. This is the conclusion I have come to. People are abandoning our car parks for short stay. That's a fact. From the numbers I can see, but we don't have the time slots. That's the only difference. I'm sort of estimating that's what's happening here. and they are looking for alternative places. So they're going to Bracknell, Farnborough, wherever they go. And it seems their footfall hasn't fallen. So my question to you, I may have some more coming up later. My question to you is, what are you going to do? You have the data from past, you have the data from current, still it's all falling. What are you going to do to improve the car parking footfall so our town centre can actually survive?
Thank you for the question. I'll try to unpick what I can from your comments. But the town centre, the decline in the town centre, very similar to other town centres of a similar size up and down the country, as is evidenced by the BRC data, is declining. Car parking is declining slightly slower than the footfall in the town centre, but as I've already stated, even last year, only 12.5% of people who shop in Camberley park in our car parks. That means the reduction of around 10% year on year is not being driven by car parking charges. There is something else in our town centre which needs to be understood and corrected, not just looking at parking charges. I do not believe that changing car parking charges would drive extra footfall into Camberley town centre.
Quickly.
Very quickly, sorry. Just to give you some stats. Camberley, 14% down. These are the footfall figures. Bracknell, 19.7% up. And Guildford, 13% up, just for your information.
Again, thank you for that, Councillor Mulvaginam. I'm not going to cherry pick the BRC report to compare other towns and show where we are comparable. I don't think that's a good use of time for this committee. But I could cherry pick, as you have done, to back up my argument. But thank you for the question.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Thank you to the writers of the report, and it's a review that I requested at this committee because I'm sure you understand this is an important subject for us to scrutinise, the executive on. So first of all, great news that we've got the 22% increase in revenue, and that is a massive step up to 1.8 million. But the thing that really concerns me is what you've just said earlier about parking being a discretionary service. We can't change it to compulsory service. We know what discretionary services are in this council and which ones are statutory. So it's a concern that it says in the report on page 3 out of 25 that it still doesn't cover all its costs. So as you said, it's being subsidised, and a discretionary service that's being subsidised is a really vulnerable service. So we don't want to lose our car parks, our residents don't want to lose our car parks, but if this council goes into section 114 or it's taken over by a unitary authority, then this is going to be looked at by others. We will lose control of what happens to the car parks. So it's because of that I spoke to Woking Borough Council, the finance portfolio holder there. They're already bankrupt. Their previous administration took them a bit faster down that route that we are going on, whether we're going gradually or suddenly into bankruptcy. But so I asked him, how can they support, because they don't have any money really to spend on discretionary services, how can they continue to have car parks? And well, their car parks contribute £7 million of income to the overall council budget. And that's why their car parks are safe. So, and that just for scale, that amount is more than 50% of their council tax take. So I guess my question is the best way for us to protect the future of car parks in this borough, which will soon not be a borough, to make sure that they do pay for themselves and they make a contribution, and then there won't be a case for closing them down, selling them off, or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I think the question is, should we continue our drive to make car parking as a discretionary service self-funding and not subsidised by council taxpayers? That is absolutely our desire. The challenge we have at the moment, and I alluded to it, and no one has raised surveys or anything about it, is the lack of maintenance for 10 years leading up to last year when we implemented the parking strategy, and the fact that we have every single lift to replace in our multi-stories, for example, over the next 3 years, none of which are cheap. So while we are driving towards making our car parking cost neutral, so no burden on council taxpayers, we do have a bell wave of work that was pushed into the future in the past that we have to get completed if our service is going to match that of other town centres. I don't think we would do very much for town centre footfall if people couldn't get their buggies or wheelchairs in a lift in the main square car park because we hadn't maintained it. So there is a bit of chicken and egg and a bit of work to do over the next few years to make us fit for purpose. So I share your views. We are driving towards it, but there is work to do before we can get there.
Thank you, and that echoes the advice, the officer advice that we got when we took the decision to modestly increase the charges, that car parking is not a price elastic demand, it's inelastic within reason, you know, because people don't choose where they're going to shop according to how expensive the car park is, because if you want to shop in John Lewis, you go and park in a town that's got a John Lewis. If you want to go to a certain restaurant, you park there, and that's how consumers logically decide what to do. But if the car park is unsafe, falling down, dark, the lifts don't work, then that would impact their consumer behaviour. And just to tie into that, the new machines at the pay and display machines, the one in Bagshot, I was there the other day talking to all the people that were using it to see what they think of the new machine. It is quite a recent change, that machine, and in fact I think it's been the last month or so. And so I think we'll see the benefits of all these improvements over the next year's statistics. And the feedback was great. People can use the cards. You don't have to use the Ringo app, which charges you 20p extra a time, and it's fiddly, and you've got to download it and everything. So, yeah, I think that definitely makes a difference. And I think the statistics in the report say that at the town centre multi-storey car parks, usage had reduced by 4%. As you say, that's only a small amount compared to general people going to using retail and other shops over that period. But it doesn't mention in this report that the Camberley Theatre was closed for 4 months over this period. Wouldn't that account for the 4% drop? Because surely most people who use Camberley Theatre use Knoll Road. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Again, there's no knowing how many shows, how many people who would have attended those shows, who would have parked in our car park. I think the theatre being closed, although it was a necessity in terms of public safety, possibly had an impact on the footfall in the town centre as well as on the parking and potentially on some of the businesses involved in the nighttime economy. I'm just very relieved that that theatre is now back up and running and being used, and we will see in the numbers over the coming months from the Knoll Road car park how much of an impact the closure of the theatre had. Thank you.
Thank you. I happen to have the figures in front of me now, and the figures for 23 and 24 are exactly the same for Knoll Road, so they didn't actually decrease over that period of time. These will be available. It's just I got Alan to send them to me, and he only sent them to me, I think it was this morning. So they will. I'll make sure that we're happy to give those to councillors as well, because I don't want to be accused of being Camberley-centric, which I know sometimes the villages ask. Sorry, yes.
Sorry, can I just make a comment? I think my point was that there would have been more people parking in Knoll Road, not that the figures would necessarily have dropped.
It would be very surprising if that's the case, because every other figure in this has dropped. So if that is the case, then that would buck the trend of every other car parking figure within the figures I've got before me, because every other one has dropped, wherever it is, okay? So, and that was my question. I'll take it away from Camberley. The figures have dropped, except for Yorktown. Yorktown's become really popular all of a sudden. I don't know why. We've got 6,000 increase in parking numbers in Yorktown. All the rest are down. And I know that in the villages, as you will know, Councillor Wilson, I mean, obviously there was the 30 minutes parking. And what we can't tell from this is because we've got lovely footfall figures for Camberley, we haven't got footfall figures for the villages. So we don't actually know how that's affecting the villages other than from anecdotal evidence on that, which is unfortunate. But the figures of the parking are down, and there is a question. And I know we've discussed the income, which is very good, as you quite rightly say. It's up by about £60,000 over the from 23 to 24, which is obviously good. But what we don't know is, are less people visiting the villages because the parking is now not 30 minutes and an hour? It's a figure we're probably not going to know unless the councillors are getting that anecdotal evidence, speaking to the residents. So a question I have is looking at the Wilton. I know Wilton Road's only been open for a while, but the income from Wilton Road is very, very, very low, at £282.96 from the figures I have. Is that, will that have even covered the putting in of the relevant equipment? Because I'm concerned that we've put it in and no one's actually now paying for it. I know Wilton Road was an area of concern because people were parking there willy-nilly, but I do wonder if that's covered off. I don't know if that's something you've got, and I apologise because I've got these figures and you haven't, so I apologise for that.
Just covering off the first point you made on the numbers, bear with me just a second. The numbers from 2 years ago then went up on P&D previous year and then went down again this year. So it's not been a consistent decline, and that kind of tends to be the nature of the villages. If there are events that happen, then people will attend. For example, roadworks in a particular area, I know around my area, over the summer had a big impact on car park usage. So this is why we haven't projected any trend from our pay and display car parks. In terms of Wilton Road was previously non-chargeable. We've put the equipment in. We are starting to generate some revenue. The question, I think, is how long will it take to pay back that? It looks like it's a very slow start. So watch this space. I think on Wilton Road in particular, we'll have to look at that in the round as we do the review, as we go through the year.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Councillor Rowlands, Councillor Tedder, and then Councillor Mulbagger.
Thank you, Chairman. There was comment about Yorktown, and that reflects a situation which is almost the reverse of what we've been talking about suburban parking, because there is a mini crisis as far as parking on the industrial estate is concerned. If you drive around the Yorktown industrial estate, you'll find it difficult to get parking anywhere. So obviously the parking at Yorktown reflects that. So it is the one parking area which is available, and of course it gets the overspill from the nearby parking area. So it's the one area that reflects the difference between what we might call recreational parking for theatres, etc., and people parking essentially to work on the industrial estate.
I'd like to also thank Councillor Rowlands that your efforts in trying to get illegal parking on Frimley Road down has helped persuade people to go and use the car park rather than abandoning their cars at the dangerous junction. So I'd like to congratulate you for your work on that. Thank you.
Councillor Tedder.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Ashby, you mentioned in your statement about upgrading lighting. Could you please consider upgrading the lighting in Chobham Car Park? We have one light, but the light that is by the entrance coming through Cannon Crescent, at night, I mean, I won't park in there because it is so dark just in that spot. It really needs another light in there. So could I ask that the next round that the lighting in Chobham Car Park is looked at? Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for the point. Mr. Burns, our parking manager, is online listening now, so I will have a chat with him and make sure he adds it to his very, very, very long list of remedial works that need to be carried out across all of our car parking portfolio.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Mavagam, I'd like to thank Mr. Burns because I bombarded him with some questions. He's written a very good report and there's lots of information in it. So thank you for all your work on pulling this together and thank you for supplying all the data so far. Thank you. Councillor Mavagam.
Thank you, Chair. Let me actually add to that. I should have started with that sort of thank you to the officers who put this paper together. It's fantastic. It's just that if they could continue to do this graph for us, that'll be great. Just to come back to you on a point you raised, the figures I gave you are not anecdotal. They're actually out there in the public domain. So I'm not sitting here and giving you bird numbers, okay? Serious. You guys need to research. I've done the research. You can do it yourselves. There's also confusion, Councillor Ashbury, with regard to capital expenditure and income. We talk about income from the car parks. Most of them are capex. So if you take the capex out, I don't want to teach you accounting here. You have a good accountant sitting right next to me. I'm sure Councillor Liz Noble would be more than happy to teach you this. If you take the capex out, you are actually making money. Yes? Because you are making money and your running cost is less. Okay, let's park that to a side. So don't confuse the listeners, yeah, saying that you're still falling short. You are not. From a revenue point of view. The capex point of view, it could have come out of your capital expenditure budget, instead of which you are taking it out of the car parking revenue. That's fine. But do not confuse the listener with these two items, please. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I am very well aware of what we said. I did refer in my introduction to the capital expenditure we are making. I will just make the point that the revenue that the car parks generate goes not only to the cost of providing the service, but the borrowing costs of the capital that is borrowed to spend. So it is, as you say, we strive to make a surplus, but it's not just as straightforward as revenue and capital are completely separate and not linked.
Okay, I'm going to ask a quick question while I think about it, and then Councillor Betton. It came to me while we were talking about theatre. I know they do validating parking. How does that appear on these figures? Does it come up as a Knoll Road car parking figure as normal, or is that off somewhere else? It's just I'd be interested to know where that comes from. I know you may not. It's literally come to me, so I'm not just suddenly throwing it in there.
I don't know. You'd be surprised to know. I don't know if Mr. Burns is able to give you an answer to that as to exactly where that appears.
Alan, are you there?
Yes, certainly. The theatre income's not on our reports because that goes to the theatre, not to us.
Is it? Because it is relevant, but it goes back to the point about, is it something we can have in a future report, just so we know how much validating parking? Because that obviously shows the numbers and how much is going through the books that way. Is that, I mean, without asking for anything special, is that something we can do?
Yes, certainly. I can certainly do that moving forward.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Betton.
Thank you. It's just a point of information or clarification, if you like. Talking about the upturn in Yorktown. Don't forget that Yorktown was a COVID treatment centre for almost a year. And it wasn't hardly used as a car park at all in that time because the whole area was covered in NHS stuff.
I take that. In 23, it was 9,790. In 23, it was 10,318. And in 24, it's 16,511. So it's quite a drop after COVID, but I take that point. Okay, any other questions? Can I ask one? Can I ask about the accreditation for park? Is it park? Park Mark. When will that come in? What are the effects? Because I know there was a point when I was reading the report at the chair's briefing, it highlights that people want to feel safe, which is brilliant. But how do they know they're going to be safe? So how does that work?
I'll defer you again to Mr. Burns for the detailed timescale on the work that's happening towards that, if that's okay.
Yep, certainly. The Park Mark accreditation, now we have the CCTV installed and the tannoys installed across both multi-storey car parks. We can now be assessed by the Park Mark team. They will come out, they'll do a full assessment. They always make recommendations. They make some recommendations of other areas we need to improve. And then hopefully we'll be in a good position to be awarded the Park Mark accreditation for our 2 multi-storey car parks. Once they're done, we'll be moving on to the pay and displays, because I don't think it should be just 2 multi-stories. We should make people feel safe. But then we'll go on to the pay and displays to look at accreditation for those as well.
And what does that accreditation actually give us? Do we have signs up that say we're accredited? How does that make the resident of Surrey Heath feel safe? How do they know they're going to be safer?
Yeah, with Park Mark accreditation, basically it's a certification process. You go on the national website to say your car park's been accredited. Okay, plus we put safer zone signs up, which is the Park Mark award sign. That goes on all our machines. And also with the new CCTV signs, it just makes people aware that there is someone there supporting them and watching what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nothing. Wow. Okay. In which case, if no one's got any other questions, we will stop that item. Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. There was no one online, was there? Just okay, fine. I missed someone. Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. Thank you to Mr. Burns for your efforts and the report, which was very nice. And had lots of colours on it, which always makes it better for me, because graphs always make things look better or worse, depending on how you look at them. So thank you very much. So we're going to go on to portfolio update, and we'll give Councillor Ashbury a bit of time to sneak out, because I know he wants to sneak out. No problem. And then we'll go on to the portfolio update, which will be over to Councillor Rise.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. The past year has been a busy and productive year within my portfolio area. Just before I go into my full introduction, I would like to refer the committee to an absent set of detail with regards to climate change. This was inadvertent due to the recent restructuring and changes within the Council and Executive portfolio holder responsibilities. There was an error somewhere. The delivery of the Climate Change Action Plan comes to this committee separately, where delivery can be scrutinised. I also would be happy to come back to this committee if it was desired by the committee to answer a question if time allowed. As I mentioned, the last year has been a busy year. There's been change within the team under the leadership of Sue McCubbin, covering the Leisure and Culture team, ably supported by the team, including Nikki Sherlow and Katie Stockley, who are attending as well this evening. There's also been change within the JWS team, specifically relating to the Surrey Environment Partnership. SEP was ended this year and taken back in-house by Surrey County Council, as we have seen with a number of other services across the county. Staff from JWS were TP'd across to Surrey County Council, and the contract management of the waste collections contract remains within the JWS team as before. The JWS team has also gone through a restructure as well. I'm confident that the existing delivery of the waste collection contract has performed well over the last year, with KPIs being met as monitored. We are well served by the depot in Surrey Heath, and while there are some isolated incidents that require attention, the vast majority of our bins are collected on time by a very good workforce. We continue to be a strong performer with high recycling rates, despite a relative plateauing of performance, which is a pattern reflected across councils in England. As we move into the future, the targets on recycling are likely to increase, and this continues to influence the priorities of both the joint contract and SEP, which is now the SEC controlled service, work plans with a focus on reduction in waste while increasing the quality of material sent for recycling and composting. As members will know, our current contract for the waste collection service ends in 2027, and we're in the process of working on new contract options. This is an ongoing process. An early decision was taken to remain within the joint authority of 4 councils, and that the chosen method for delivery of the new service will be an external contractor, as we currently have now. We are now moving into the service delivery stage of our work, exploring the potential offer that we would put out to tender. I can add through some early market pre-engagement that JWS has undertaken, the joint authority area seen as very attractive to the existing market. There is an obvious change on the horizon that we have to contend with when it comes to the waste collection service, and that's local government reorganisation. The change to new unitary authorities is expected to occur at, if not the same time, a very similar time to when the new contract is due to come into effect. This has been a regular point of discussion as to how it will work. The new authorities will likely be split across the joint authority, but it is currently understood that there will be a significant period of transition, and an existing contract in place ready to go in 2027 will be preferable for the new authorities rather than them having to negotiate a new contract at that time. This remains consistently under review, and we will be engaged when the final detail of local government reorganisation, the new boundaries, there will be further engagement with the likely areas that we will be going into to new authorities with. The delivery of the new contract is expected to be agreed in 2026 to ensure there is sufficient run-up time to get the new contract in place and ready to go. Moving on to the leisure and culture side of my report, this provides a comprehensive update on the performance, development and strategic direction of the Council's leisure, heritage, parks and cultural services over the past year. It highlights strong achievements in customer satisfaction, visitor numbers and community engagement, alongside significant investment in infrastructure such as the leisure centres and public spaces. The report also outlines efforts to promote public health, preserve local heritage and enhance inclusivity and digital access to services. Places Leisure continues to thrive and is now Places' best, if not the best performing centres they have. We were successful in securing funding from Sports England, which enabled the installation of PV solar panels on the roof and a pool cover that will see greater energy efficiency in the leisure centre. Grounds maintenance has significantly improved this year, following a difficult year last year. A new contract manager at Glendale has led to greater consistency and improved service delivery. This improved service delivery is clearly demonstrated by the sharp decline in default notices issued by Surrey Heath Borough Council from 73 in 2023 to 7 in 2024. We have also completed the bin replacement programme, replacing the dog waste bins with higher capacity bins, as well as new mixed waste bins within higher traffic areas. So I feel like I've missed something. Yes, the theatre, my apologies. We've seen Camberley Theatre this year, my apologies, Ms Stockley. We've seen Camberley Theatre temporarily close to complete the rack remediation and then reopen with an amazing panto, Snow White. And the theatre is going from strength to strength under Kaylee Stockley's management. I'm excited to see another successful year. The report sets out a lot of detailed numbers and information, and I'm not going to go through it in my introduction, as I'm happy to answer any questions on any part of my report. Thank you.
Before I open it up for questions, I'm going to do it now. Thank you for the report. Thank you for all the time and effort that goes in, because I know these things don't suddenly come as if by magic. So thank you to the whole team for pulling it together. Right, open to questions. Councillor Rowlands, Councillor Wilson, and then Councillor O'Mahony. Councillor Rowlands, sorry, yes.
Can I ask you, Chair, whether you're going to work through the report systematically or just it's an open potpourri?
Sorry, I would just go, as we normally do, just go for a free-for-all. Just go wherever you want to go, Councillor Rowlands.
Okay, talking about Places Leisure, obviously it's a different category. It's generally a success story. But of course, with success comes a different complexity of problems. And one of the problems that has come very much to my attention as a user, reported from a number of people, is the failure to repair machines which are used by the older generation, of which I'm pleased to count myself in. And this particular machine has been sitting unused for probably at least a couple of months, 3 months. And it is an important part of that, the usage which is made by that particular section. I mean, looking at the general success level, it's disappointing to pick out on that, but I feel that's something that reflects the number of people that are using the centre, and that's another issue that you can vary your times of going to the gym, but you find that at each time some of the equipment is unavailable because of extensive usage. And it's nice to be in this situation and not really worrying about how you can stimulate activity and fill it. But it'd be interesting to receive some sort of idea about how this might be better coped with, because we're a growing population and correspondingly a number of more people wanting to use the gym. So there needs to be some creative thinking in that direction. Thank you, Chair.
I'm sure Duncan would be unhappy to hear that there's a machine
Yes,
that's not working. So how are you going to answer that one?
I would first start by saying that obviously Places Leisure is operationally responsible for the delivery of the leisure centre. So we as the council don't have any direct involvement with replacements of machines, etc. However, there is a kind of over scrutiny of the contract management of the Places Leisure. So what I would say is, firstly, I would always encourage anyone to report broken machinery or malfunctioning machinery to the leisure centre staff, which I'm sure that probably happens. And I also agree with you that encouraging older people to live healthy lives is incredibly important. What I think we can do with regards to, from the council's perspective, is to engage with Places Leisure to highlight that concern. I haven't spoken. I don't believe that officers have received that level of complaint through to them. So that would be something that I would ask officers to pick up with the team at Places Leisure. And I do believe Ms McCubbin wants to come in.
Good evening, Councillor Rose. What I'd like to do is, Nikki's going to pick that up directly with them, but I think what would be a really good customer journey would be if the machine is out of order, there's a sign on the machine that actually says when it's due to be replaced, or because it's probably a component part they're waiting for, but that's a huge assumption on my behalf. We will look into it, but I think perhaps some clearer signage for customers would be welcome, because then you'd know the answer to the question of when that would happen. Okay?
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thank you for the report as well. It's on page 43. It's probably a short question, this one. I used to get, and I think all councillors used to get, a lot of complaints from the public about litter bins and dog poo bins that hadn't been emptied. And I just don't get that anymore. The only ones I get are about bins that are not operated by the council, that are operated by Persimmon Homes, mostly. So just looking at that table, I was wondering what happened in the middle of 2023. It looks like the penalty notices and default notices, whatever, went up massively for a few months, and then the performance just drastically improved, and there's hardly any complaints about the performance after that. That fits anecdotally with what I've seen, so was there something that happened round about then? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I will bring in an officer just to provide an answer on that, but my understanding there were significant changes to staffing within that year, which would have seen an increased collection. It's great to hear that you're not getting the complaints about bins as we were. As members that know me know I have a deep passion about bins. It's good to hear that we're not getting that. As I did mention in my report, there is a relatively new contract manager within Glendale, which has led to further improvements within the delivery of the service as well. I will just pass over to Sue McCubbin just to provide a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Councillor Rise. Actually, that was a very specific event where the contract manager, who is excellent, and I will say that very publicly, actually went on holiday, and unfortunately the member of staff who is responsible for the bin collections at the time decided to also take some time off, but it wasn't necessarily planned. So on that occasion they had to draft people in who didn't know the rounds and the routes as well as they could or should have done. So unfortunately it did mean that we got complaints at that time, but you'll see that it was remedied very quickly and back up on top, and actually there's been measures put in place along with measures put in place for the summer months where there's duplicate people doing rounds, so that actually we have less issues moving forward. So it was jumped on, and the good thing was when there was a problem, it was solved really, really quickly, so we were pleased.
I echo Councillor Wilson's report, question. I have seen a sharp decrease in dog poo bin emptying needs. I love the fact we get to talk about dog poo and you haven't even mentioned it once. Okay, over to Councillor O'Mahony.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions about
various aspects. Just crack on. Places Leisure, huge success. Is there any chance we can get a P&L to have a look at it?
At request, we can.
At request, yeah. And also, is there any audit trail showing the feedback of revenue from the Sports England solar pool cover? Because that was supposed to come back to the council.
Apologies, say that again. I was still being shocked at myself and not realising what you meant by P&L for a second. So I completely went into a blind panic. Say that again, so sorry.
The solar
Yeah.
cover and the solar roof, I was under the assumption that the savings for that will flow back to Surrey Heath.
Did you want to take
No, you
that?
take it, please.
Okay, thank you. How it works is we got the grant then pays for the solar power. The solar power is then used by the centre to reduce their utility costs. Now, we have a really complicated energy benchmarking sort of clause within the contract that is a mechanism that is, we take some risk, they take some risk, there's a balancing of the books. It's not something I can explain without a bit of paper in front of me completely. However, it reduces our risk on the energy benchmarking that we will then incur additional charges. So that's one way that we would see a reduction in costs, because at the moment, because the utility costs, we are seeing additional charges. Secondly, they are paying us £8,000 per annum in acknowledgement of the utility cost reduction that they will be receiving. This is unusual. We are the only centre that's actually negotiated an actual value from Places Leisure for all of the centres that they're doing this same initiative with.
Okay, but those figures go up and down against the energy market, or is it a static
They
figure?
are, what's the word I'm looking for? No, they are increased every year. Index link, that's the one I was looking for. So we will get an increase. They're not indexed to the utility market.
Is that a wise move? Because the markets are moving up and down monthly. So, for instance, if you go on a variable with one of the providers, it can change 20, 25% easily from month to month.
The money that we receive, the £8,000, is a set figure. It's not linked to the energy actually very specifically. It's just a negotiated figure. The actual benchmarking figures would rise and fall, as you say, with the costs, and that's the separate clause in the contract.
So at the end of the year, then, that gets balanced out to make sure we're
There is a clause,
in the green or
yes.
in the red. I mean, it sounds complex.
It is really complex, and I'm not making light of it. I'm more than happy to take it offline and talk you through it in great depth. But there is we can call the energy benchmarking if we think it would reduce our costs. They can call the energy benchmarking if they think they can get costs out of us because of the price of the utilities.
Okay.
At the moment, it's working in Places Leisure's favour, so we're subsidising it further than we would, as part of the management agreement. As they drop, the chances are we will then call that benchmarking clause, because actually we'll be able to reduce that cost down for ourselves. So that's where it does move with the utility prices. The £8,000 is like a management fee that they're paying to us, but it will reduce our cost.
Yeah, I mean, if we could take that offline a little bit and then sort of come back to it.
Yeah.
I've got more questions. Camberley Theatre. The pantomime apparently grows 271,000, net of 24.6. Is there any? It's 11%. Is there anything?
I will ask Kaylee to, because she can give you the correct answer.
Thank you. So, yes, the 274 that you saw, that was actually our gross figures as well, so that's inclusive of that. That was noted, I think, in the figures. So, out of that, obviously, we take the VAT out, and we've got restoration levies and things like that that all come out of our ticket prices. But it was around, top of my head, I don't know if it was in the report, was it 230 something net, somewhere around there, after that. It's still a substantial amount compared to the net position at the end, but the costs of a production like that are substantial. Obviously, we've got all of our artist fees, our professional performers, 6-week contracts, 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. We've also got our all of our set hire, all of the effects and all of the equipment that gets brought in for the pantomime. We also apportion everything within our budget that relates to Panto to the Panto budget. So all of our core team, our full-time staff, have a portion of their salary attributed to the pantomime budget, so that's a real cost of pantomime, and the same with our front of house staff. So all of the ushers that you see, the cost of running the bar, all of that is attributed to a pantomime budget, essentially the cost of running that pantomime. If it were professional shows, then obviously that cost would be under our main theatre budget, and our casual spend and stuff on the hourly rates for our staff would be reflected there instead. But it's that we make sure that our pantomime budget shows the entire cost of it, including advertising, all of those things. There's a lot of costs involved. I think artists' fees last year were about 45,000 plus then professional fees. You know, there's a lot of costs that are attributable to the professionals involved within Panto that aren't just our core team.
Okay, lovely. Just one more question on that. With the new partnership, do you have a break even? What it's needed?
Yeah. So I haven't got the figures in front of me, and I don't want to go too kind of too deep with any of that. But I'm happy to do that with you offline. We forecast the pantomime position for this year, were we to do it in-house and were we to go for an external production partner. And the net position at the end of that is the same, pretty much, give or take. It's actually slightly higher, I think, with our external partner, based on what we can achieve with that partnership, with the access to the production kind of resources that they have. What we have seen for the last few years, and we will have seen it come through these kind of these meetings, is a slow reduction in our net position at the end of pantomime each year, and it is solely attributable actually to the increases in minimum wage, and how that affects then the overall cost of all of our performers and all of our front of house staff, and we're seeing the biggest rises in those areas of our budget each year. We are also seeing increases in costs for equipment hire. All of our kind of general production costs, costume hires and things like that are increasing quite significantly. So by working with an external partner, we're actually able to not only put on a bigger production with more shows, even for our very first year, we're going to end up in a very solid position financially, but we're not going to be taking on that financial risk, if that makes sense. So, they've got access to all of the costumes, they've already got the sets, they've got all of these things, so they're able to deliver those things at a better rate for us, without us having to kind of shoulder additional costs and go into external suppliers left, right and centre and trying to coordinate all of that. So it's freed up a lot of capacity within our team as well, which has been kind of an intangible cost benefit almost. Whilst our net position on Panto would be the same, we've freed up a lot of officer time to be able to dedicate to income generation in other areas throughout the year. So that's kind of the rationale for it, really.
You can get the door offline for the break.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Can I just to take this reference to theatre and pantomime, I'm right in thinking that you guys were producing the Panto previously, or you were involved with the production. Okay, that is not to be underestimated. If someone has done that as a sideline, that is not to be underestimated. So by getting a production company in to do that, that's obviously freeing up the staff. But if you've got the bulk buying, because a production company that's linked to other companies means they've got sets, the cloths are all really expensive, etc., etc. So it's actually increasing the bulk buying of thing, and actually takes a lot of responsibility off you guys. Just following on to that, what's the liability? Because obviously they're taking on a lot of the production. So do they get a percentage of the total ticket sales, which you don't have to discuss those figures here, but do they take a percentage, and which we would normally get that? So, but you're predicting a higher net figure. So they're taking on a lot of the responsibility. They're also taking a cut, but you're also going to get a better monetary value from it. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. We're not doing it on a percentage split with them. We've actually got quite a rare deal for a production partnership like this. So our financial arrangement is known as a first call, second call. arrangement. So essentially, from all of our ticket sales, we will get the first call on the ticket sales of X amount, and then the production company will take a second call. It's very rare to see that arrangement. More often than not, the production company want their money back first. However, their experience and their confidence in based on our previous performance and their other venues, they're more than confident that we are going to reach at least that baseline figure within the contractual arrangement, and then anything over and above that will be done on a 50-50 split.
Can you just explain first call, second call?
So, to use example figures, if you had £100,000 in ticket sales, and you would set a first call as a figure rather than a percentage. So it might be that the first £20,000 of ticket sales goes to one partner, and the next 80 would go to the other, however your arrangement may be. But typically what would happen is in that 100,000, the production company would say, we want our 75,000 back first, like any other investor really. I want my money back first, and then you can take from what comes next. They've done it the other way around. So essentially, not that it would happen, but if it bombed and it only made, you know, a low amount of money that didn't cover production costs, the first X amount is ours contractually. So it's in their interests to give us a production that makes the full amount of the contract value so that they actually recoup their production costs. So it is a very beneficial agreement for us because we've got that security there that they're not just in it to get the first bit of money and then they've made their money back and they can run. It's very much a mutual benefit there.
Just to add on to that point, as well as kind of general de-risking of the panto as well, I think as we mentioned, Kelly takes on a lot of work as the team at the theatre with regards to the pantomime. By bringing in an external company, it actually frees up a lot of time of the theatre staff to be able to focus on delivery of other performances throughout the year. It enables Kelly to be bringing in more performances and driving up income from the theatre as well. We've been quite challenging on the theatre to become as cost neutral which I believe we are achieving. So by de-risking the panto, it actually improves the general delivery of the theatre as well.
Thank you. You got more questions? Has anyone else got any other questions? Okay, I'm going to bounce you for a second. So I'm going to go to Councillor Wilson first, and then Councillor Rowland.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, it's a complete change of subject, if that's okay. Just going back to what you said at the start about net zero not being part of this portfolio update, it does feel like we did have a report about climate reasonably recently, so I don't have a problem with that. And maybe when we get to the work programme, we can see if we need to fit in another one. But just because of everything that's been in the news recently and it's really topical, I was just wondering if you could reassure us about the Council's commitment to net zero, because we've had things like ex-Prime Minister Tony Blair saying that the government should just go back on its manifesto pledges. The government does seem to be backsliding a bit on what it had pledged on net zero and the climate. The opposition, the Conservative opposition, are now completely almost against net zero, and then we've got Reform and Donald Trump threatening, you know, the climate for the whole world. But our residents, this is really important to them, and they really value the clean air and the clean water and the energy security that we get from renewables. So can you just reassure everybody that it's still a priority for the Council? Thank you.
Yes, just on the first point, what I think what we've had recently was the Climate Change Action Plan, which was scrutinised, which I think is where the confusion with regards to tonight's report came from. With regards to a commitment to net zero, I'm absolutely committed, as well as this administration. I view the delivery of net zero projects, as well as green energy, as well as greater sustainability and increased biodiversity, as an opportunity, not as something that we just have to do, but as a great opportunity for the borough to be a better place to live, work. Obviously, there are financial constraints on this council, and we're also coming to the end of this council's life. So the projects that we may have hoped to deliver 4 years ago or 6 years ago have been required to change, but my commitment to delivery of net zero projects is not diminished. We are constantly, our climate change manager is always looking for ways to fund new projects. There's been a commitment from the leader and from the rest and the portfolio holder for finance. So if there are projects where we can invest to save, those will be viewed favourably. So yes, I'm absolutely more than willing to give that commitment that this council will always be committed to delivery of net zero. We still have a target of scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2030, which I hope the new unitary authorities will take on, as well as the scope 3 emissions by 2040 as well. I want to ensure that in the final 2 years or so that we have in this council, that we're doing as much as we can, and we put Surrey Heath in the best position going forward into a new authority of delivering net zero projects.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands.
Thank you, Chair. Questions about going to 3.2, we talk about flatline booking. Is that a satisfactory performance? Just mentioned. 3.3, we have talked, I think we talked about this previously, and finding some way to encourage various cultural groups within the community to actually use our theatre and to work out a cost-benefit analysis that enables them to get in there when you pass and the theatre is black at various times. It's important that we look at that as a possibility and use the facility to its fullest ability. 3.7, looking at the previous success of some of our community activities in the past, I think it's a shame that last year was a lot of that external activity had to be cancelled, I think. And hope that we can actually this year achieve having some of those actually taking place again. Do you want me to go on or wait till somebody comes back for another?
I think that's probably given them a few points to pick up on. Can I just also throw something just off the back of Councillor Rowland's point? I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. I happen to be at High Cross on a regular basis because I go to rock choir, and I know that Made in Dagenham guys are rehearsing there, but they're doing the show at Camberley Theatre, aren't they? Is there a particular reason why they can't use the venue for rehearsing as well? Because that would make perfect sense. Obviously not the stage, because I appreciate that costs money, lights, blah, blah. But is there a reason why they couldn't be doing that? Because I didn't realise they weren't, and it would make sense for them to reverse in the theatre as well. So I don't want to hijack his question, but just off the back of that. Murray, can you turn your mic on?
Oh, sorry.
Whilst I won't go into the details of why independent organisations choose where they choose, but what I can tell you is that the rehearsals for Made in Dagenham started last year whilst we were closed, which started a programme of rehearsal bookings. However, they are now rehearsing in the theatre and were at the weekend. Thanks.
Do you want to answer any of the other points? Okay, over to you.
Thank you. Just with regards to the percentage with regards to attendance, I think the fact that the theatre was closed for 4 months, I think we've proved. I think it's the numbers that we had are very good. I want to see more people going to the theatre, as I'm pretty certain we all do, and Miss Stockley is driving that forward as much as possible. With regards to a greater use of the theatre, we've had this conversation many times. It's about the theatre being able to operate as a commercial venture. That's essential for the theatre, is long-term sustainability. I talked about LGR earlier. We don't know what is going to happen into the future, what a new West Surrey authority is going to look at when it comes to community-based theatres. I want Camberley Theatre to not be a financial drag on any budget, so it can protect itself. Because the way I view what will happen is that a new authority will look at anything that's costing them money and will go, let's get rid of it because we can't afford it. So the ability for they have to be able to pay to be able to do it. What the theatre team are looking at is that it's using the space more effectively. They're looking, so for example, with the function room now being used as a potential lounge area, with the Ian Goodchild Centre building as well, when fully available, be able to use that for more rehearsal space or space by youth groups, youth theatre groups. It's about finding those ways forward. So yes, Councillor Rowlands, I agree with you. I want to find more ways of maximising the use of the theatre, but it is a process. It does take time, and it can't just be for free, unfortunately. That's just the reality of the world we live in at the moment. And I know that's not what you suggested, Councillor Rowlands. Always trying to find potential new performances is something that the team are doing on a daily basis.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Councillor Mahoney, and I'm going to go back to you, but I'm going to do Chair's prerogative. 3.8, I'm just going to make a comment. Brian Cox, okay, I saw that. Wow, the man's got the brain the size of a planet, literally. It was interesting. I've mentioned to a number of people since, and they've all said, I wish I knew, I wanted to go and see him. So there is, I mean, I know the programming is difficult, but something like that was, and I know you had it 2 nights, and I think I've heard that he wants to come back or you want him back. But those sort of things are certainly really of interest, and there was quite a diverse audience for that, and it's not a tribute act, it's not, so I really think that some of the stuff that you're doing is really good, and you should be wholeheartedly slapped on the back for that.
Well, I would very much agree. Also, for example, we've had Chris McCausland perform recently, so I do think that the performances are. I didn't get a ticket for that either, and I almost tried to pull portfolio holder rank. I stopped myself. I didn't. But no, the fact that we are able to attract these performances is a real testament to the work that Kaylee and her team are doing. So, complete congratulations to them.
Right, let's make it into the O'Mahony and Rowland show. Back to Councillor O'Mahony.
Thank you, Chair. I only have 2 more questions. Tree stock and play areas. You've already surveyed 110,000 trees. All future works are subject to budget constraints. Do we have any idea at the moment where that money may come from?
Essentially, any unplanned works that would arise would come out from the revenue budget of the existing revenue budget. So, as the team currently do, there would be an assessment of, is there something that could be moved to be able to do that, or there would be a need to increase the budget to be able to provide that. If there were a significant number of tree failures occur above normal levels, it would be necessary to divert funds to complete emergency works. Miss Curry, I'll ask her to come in. But were you going to ask a question about play areas, or was that next?
You can tie it in, it's fine.
Essentially, repairs to play parks we're not able to insure. It's not possible to insure them. So any replacement that we have to do on play parks has to come out of the budgets that we have. So, for example, recently there was a new park in Lightwater, and the zip line. I don't know if you can call it a zip line. The seat was broken by, I think, around about 6 people trying to use it at once. We were very fortunate that the manufacturer repaired that at their cost. However, generally, we currently have a budget for play park repairs and replacements. So it comes from a budget that we have to pass through the budget process and how that works. So generally, I'm going to stop rambling and I'll ask Ms. McCubbin or Michelle to come in.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Okay, so with trees, we have a budget, but it's a finite budget. So every year when we do the tree surveys, we get different categories of works that need to be done. They're either emergency works, like immediate works that can't wait, sort of phase one, if you like, the works that will likely become emergency works if they're not undertaken within a set period of time. And then there's general maintenance of the tree works. Usually we can plan and deliver a majority of those works. But what happens if all of a sudden we get a big storm and then we have lots of trees that have come down and we actually need to recover that? What we do is we go and do the emergency works and the sort of like the stage one works. But what might happen is the planned works will then fall into the following year's budget. So that's what we do, is we move things along. As long as we're doing the emergency works and the phase one works, then we're okay. It's just planning for that to happen. Obviously, if it happens at a time of year just before budget end and we've spent up, then we're going to have to address that separately. But that, in the main, is how we operate that budget. In relation to the playground equipment, to echo what Councillor Rice was saying, again, we have a finite budget and we replace and repair as many things as we possibly can. Sometimes it's not practical to repair. So we would either see if we could replace by using SIL opportunities. If that's not an opportunity, we would source and see if we can get any other grant funding. If the worst case scenario is that we would have to close or remove a piece of equipment, which we've not had to do as yet, but we've been close. So that's how we're addressing those budgets.
Just as an addition onto that point, just when it comes to play areas, and it's more of a general plea to people watching, and I know there are hundreds of thousands of people watching this meeting this evening, is do take care of our parks.
Please.
When they get broken, they cost a lot of money because we have to, it's not cheap to do replacements, and we have to ensure that they are safe to be used and pass inspection, etc. So my plea, please don't 6 of you try and get on a zip line because it's going to break.
Was that your last question? Go on, do what with you.
My last question is to do with recycling and waste. You've got Domain Road Waste Transfer Station coming up. We've got the new food waste service for 1,000 flats, and we have the new collection contract to be procured. Do we have a cost of business case for those? How far along is those?
So for the Doman Road site, there is, and I'm going to be very certain because there is a paper coming to executive, which is not my paper, it's Councillor Finan Cook's paper, and she's much more over the detail than I am. But that is an agreement with, I'm going to, can I say who it was with? Councillor Mr. Stevens, am I able to say that? Yeah, it's with the County Council, and that is them taking on a part of the Doman Road site to provide for their waste disposal service. What is expected with that, as a part of the papers, there is the cost business case for that as well, but that will provide a long-term future for the Doman Road site, moving into the new waste contract service. With the waste contract service, that is still a work in process. We've done pre-engagement work. We have had a consultant that has done market research that has provided us with an understanding of what the service delivery based on our current service delivery would cost, as well as estimates on what the potential new service delivery options which could come in the future could cost as well. We won't fully know what the final cost would be until we go to tender and we get the tenders back in, but we have an understanding of what that is. That is not public knowledge because it's obviously commercially sensitive, so I can't talk about that. But yes, we do have that understanding. And the other one was the food. I'm not entirely... I will just hand over to Joe Chorn, who's the head of operations at JWS.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Hopefully you can hear me. In terms of the rollouts of food waste to flats that don't already have the service, there is an element of that which is being funded by new burdens funding from government, because that's a requirement that is a mandatory requirement to provide that food waste service to all properties in the future. But the work that's been done in the past and some of the work going forward, any additional capital spend will be supplemented by funds that the County Council set aside for the delivery of these projects through the set work programme that's operating under.
Lovely, thank you very much.
It just on that, it is that weird symbiotic relationship between us as the waste collection operator and then the county council as the waste disposal operator. You normally find that we will be delivering something, but it's actually funded because it's waste disposal. So that's kind of where we are with that one. Hopefully, under the new unitary authorities, it'll be much clearer because it will be one authority delivering it, I hope.
No guarantees there. Councillor Rowland.
Thank you for having me again, Chair. 4.3, dealing with our continual problem or focus on bins, because I'm sure if there's a bin that's overfull, we hear about it PDQ. But it's not absolutely clear how we're actually managing the problem of bin collection. The particular sequence isn't actually spelt out how we're endeavouring to achieve this. And just a point about the museum, we certainly get value for money as far as that's concerned. And it's good to see that based on the VE Day occasion and how well that was managed, on how little money as well, the excellent service that our Heritage Gallery provides us.
I'll start with the museum. I fully agree. I think the Heritage Museum service that we have in Surrey Heath is exemplary. They do an incredible job on a shoestring, essentially, that I believe. What I'm really pleased with is the amount of work that Jill and the team have done with regards to accreditation, which actually now opens the opportunity for grant funding, which is currently being pursued. There are, with regards to how we can best use the collection and moving forward, and that will be able to provide much greater funding for the Museum and Heritage Service as well. I'm also really passionate about that move. I seem to always talk about LGR. It seems to constantly be on the tip of my tongue. Moving into a new authority, I want there to be something left of Surrey Heath that we can identify. And I think the Museum and the Heritage Service has such great historical knowledge of our area and the historical part Surrey Heath has played. I think being able to hand that over in a really strong case, similar to the theatre, is really important to me. With regards to the bin collection, our contract management, so through, for example, with Joe and the team at JWS and the contract manager for Glendale as well, are in regular contact with our contractors. For example, with our Glendale service, which is in our parks, the bins in our parks, there is regular communication between the Glendale manager and our team in the council. There are regular reviews with regards to the frequency of collections, the complaints that may have been submitted. And I think, as I mentioned in my earlier introduction, the fact that we've seen a drastic reduction in the number of default notices issued is showing that there is a real improvement in the service by Glendale. They are no longer having to do remedial work, they are on top of it. I have been having conversations with officers as well, but as we now move into the summer months, the pressure on our bins becomes even more. More people are out in our parks, enjoying those parks, walking their dogs and more having picnics. The bins get fuller, as we saw last year when there was the problems with the delivery then. I don't want that to happen again, and I don't believe we will. The Glendale have set out a clear programme. So in terms of how it's managed, there are the regular meetings between the council in terms of contract management and the contract delivery service as well. For Glendale, I believe there was a weekly meeting.
They meet
Fortnightly now, between the Glendale manager and our contract manager to have those discussions. They review stuff and can change frequency based on the need as well. And the similar work happens between JWS and Amy as well.
I've got one question, and then hopefully, one question, because everybody else, pretty much everything else has been covered. Firstly, though, I want to echo the comments reference the museum. I was lucky enough to go to the V event, and I know I would like to thank Hullabaloo for doing the staging and then going over to the museum. I love seeing the invites from Jill because there's always something interesting going on at the museum. And I know she's planning something for VJ Day as well for later in the year. They probably need more money, but I know we haven't got any. So I love the fact that staff were baking cakes for that event as well, which tasted very nice. So yeah, wholeheartedly echo the museum. My question relates to page 52, item 5, kilograms per household of residual waste. I'm guessing you're going to need a crystal ball for this one. Obviously, what we can see from these figures is that the targets are quite hard to meet. We're doing a really good job, but we get to we're the target. Last year we did 341, and the target for this year is 324. Is that a realistic target? And especially, how the heck? I mean, you could argue, looking at your LGR question, it's not going to be our problem by the time we get to 2041. How are we going to get to 157?
A very good question. I think with regards to the target, it is an achievable target. The target has been lowered slightly, and that was born out of when the recycling rates that we saw during the pandemic, when everyone was at home, went up. Now people are not at home as much. The rates have come down, so our target has moved accordingly. We are still outperforming the Joint Authority. We're still outperforming Surrey. I believe, the last set of figures that I saw, we were 8th in England in terms of. So that's a really positive message of Surrey Heath, is that Surrey Heath like to recycle, which is very good to hear. With regards to hitting the 2041 target, I mean, if I'm still here talking about bins in 2041, please stop me. But there are essentially, my understanding of how those targets are going to be met is the significant reduction in the amount collected in terms of residual waste. So the waste that you would put into your general bin, you will have to reduce. So that will be how we will then be. So more recycling, greater reduction of use, greater reduction of waste. How we achieve that, I don't know. That will require significant effort from national government, as well as what we can do within regards to waste collection and waste disposal. So the honest answer to you is I don't know.
So I'm going to ask a question off the back of that then, because as someone that tries to recycle as much as possible, there is some stuff you just cannot recycle. So unless the government, whoever is the government at that point, changes something with the manufacturers of, I know, probably generally food waste, isn't it? Because you buy packages and everything's got plastic in. That's never going to change.
I agree. I think there will have to be significant change at a national level. I think we will likely see the introduction of deposit return schemes. I believe that we will most likely see regulations come in with regards to soft film, which is that kind of soft plastic that's used around fruit and vegetables. That's where I think we're going to see more how the national government is going to have to drive that. How we then collect that, I think most as well, is as I mentioned earlier, it's improving the quality of the materials that we send for recycling, because often something may be put into the recycling bin, but it gets to the depot and is sorted and cannot be recycled. So it is about how we do that, I don't know, but those are things I think that that will have to be examined to be able to hit that target in 2041.
And my little old lady's happy with the fact that her food waste is now being cleaned.
I will actually pass over to Jo Chawn, because I feel that she's dialed in and she's much more knowledgeable on the topic than I am as well, of how we can meet those targets.
Over to you.
Thank you, councillors. I mean, I will say as well, I think, this is a hugely challenging target. It is going to be a very, difficult journey to get to that point with that 2041-42 target. As you can see, we have picked a lot of the low-hanging fruit, and a lot of the big change has been done in Surrey Heath and in the other joint contract authorities already in terms of the services that we provide. I think from waste audit that was done a few years ago, we know that there are still significant amounts of materials like food waste in the residual waste bin, and other recyclable components such as textiles there too. So those are areas where we want to sort of focus our interaction and communications with residents to try and divert more of that material into the alternative containers that are provided, and get those down the right disposal routes. With the legislation changes that are coming in around simpler recycling, so the requirement to provide food waste, that's seeing us roll that out to more of the flats and communal properties. Those things will help. They're not going to make significant changes, but they will all push us in the right direction. There's other elements of that waste legislation as well, which will, as Councillor Eyes referenced, see things like the deposit return scheme introduced potentially down the line, and the requirement to collect additional materials like flexible plastics, which is due to come in, we're expecting 2027. But again, those are very maybe high volume, but very lightweight materials. So whilst they might drive quantity out of the bin, in terms of volume, it's not going to make a huge difference in terms of weight. So again, there's a lot of components to this going forward, but we are looking sort of down all the avenues to see where those small wins, those small sort of 1% that we can find that will add up over the course of that time to get us to the right place.
Thank you, Joe.
Just following on from that as well, so as Joe just mentioned, textiles, we have expanded the textile disposal locations that we have across the borough as well. They're normally in the places where you would normally go and take your glass bottles. There has been a kind of a move around, because I think we've removed some of the glass recycling locations and replaced it with textile recycling. That's primarily because you can put your glass bottles into your recycling bin. So you no longer need to take them to a specific location now. Again, also with food waste as well, that work, the SEP programme, when it was under SEP, there was going to be more public kind of campaigns about increasing the amount, like when you have food waste, put it in your food waste bin instead of your bin. County hasn't been, I don't believe they've been completely clear how they're setting out their work programme. I thought there's been a transition. So I'm hoping that the County Council is going to set that out clearly. There is still going to be a SEP kind of engagement across the borough councils with the County Council. But I imagine, as again, we're moving to the end of the county and the borough councils, so we don't know really what the county council may do something as an interim and then leave it for the new authorities to take up.
I think I'm going to not even bother asking you any more questions. We've given you I think that's probably the most questions we've had for our portfolio in a very long time. There's quite a lot in that portfolio, and there's lots of various different areas, and lots of good questions and lots of good answers. So thank you very much to the team for putting the report together and being able to answer the questions. I'm going to take us on to the last item, which is the work programme, which I'm just going to bring up onto my screen now. Has anybody got any points, questions they want to add to the work programme other than what we've already got? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, it's just on the point earlier about the net zero reports from that portfolio. I know it does come back in March 26, which is, 9 months or so. So, I mean, are we happy to wait till then for the update? And we did get the climate progress update fairly recently, so.
Just having because we're just asking how difficult it would be for officers to prepare that report, because we would be we could bring it as part of the built environment and regulatory portfolio update that's coming later this year, and I could, which I believe may be under yours as homes, planning and enforcement, which is, so climate change responsibility for policy has moved from the team that it was under to under Gavin's team. So I would be happy that we can ensure that it's included in that report and I can come along and answer questions.
So that's in March anyway.
But as I said earlier, if the committee wants to slot me in at a point, I'm happy to come.
I suppose the question is there anything that you will need to update us with that can't wait till March? Is there anything we want to know that we can't wait till March? Yeah, yeah, exactly. Is there anything you specifically wanted to know?
Sorry, is that to me? Yeah, no, I'm happy to wait till March, unless something urgent comes up.
So if you're happy to wait till March, unless there's something you want to bring up.
Can I just want to ask, because my understanding is that the Climate Change Action Plan comes as a separate item. So I'm happy, I'm not sure.
The Climate Change Action Plan can come to the committee if they want it to.
Oh, it's only because I think what I think would be useful is that there are figures and emission targets that we are held to, and I think it's important that the Scrutiny Committee does have the chance to scrutinise them on a year on year. But I'm happy. We can take that. We can take this away, and officers can have a conversation.
So it looks like if that can be done for November, if that's doable with all the.
I'm more than happy to come. I will.
The ones that actually have to do the work.
I'm acutely aware of the work of the work plans that officers are under. So my recommendation would be that it be almost like a provisional, and then Mr. Stevens takes it away and confirms that it's possible.
Is it something that has to go to executive? No. Okay, fine. So it's just a scrutiny. Okay, fair enough. I'll leave. So we'll juggle that one around. I had my head down. Now I've got two hands up. So I'll go with Councillor Noble first.
Sorry, Chair, just checking that climate change one, is that the scientific one? Because there is a delay in getting the figures, which is why historically it's come in later in the year.
No, because I think that one now goes to
quality management.
Licensing. Yeah. That goes to licensing. So no, that does not one. Councillor Rowlands. Can you put your microphone on?
Chatting to another member, some time ago we looked at the situation as far as cycling were concerned in the borough, and that seems to have disappeared off the wavelength. And also the pedestrian situation, the pedestrianisation, the centre of the town, bearing in mind that I don't know what the figures are, it's around 50% of the population does not drive a motor vehicle or have a direct contact with a motor vehicle. So these are two groups that tend to be lost sight of. Perhaps it is time we had some sort of statement about that.
So those cycling for sure comes under the Homes Planning and Enforcement portfolio, which is coming in March 26. So unless there's something specific that we want to discuss, unless there's something county will come from planning, won't it, when they're doing their work on the thank you, that word. So unless that comes from county, I would suggest we leave it in March now, unless something else comes up, because it's actually on the plan because it comes under Homes Planning.
What happened to the cycle routes discussion we had?
That's a planning conversation, which is what was the
LC whip.
LC whip. So it's something that county will update us on when they want to get some feedback or tell us what's going on. But I would suggest they've probably got a little bit more going on at the moment. I haven't heard anything on it for a while. So, but that's where it comes from. It comes from county. Okay. So has anyone else got any other comments on the work programme? In which case, thank you everybody for your time this evening. Thank you for all your questions. Thank you for your answers and your time. And have a good evening. And see you, most of you, in the chamber again tomorrow night.